In the American Old West, three men stood out as notorious symbols of the era's mix of law and chaos. Known for their lethal skills and unpredictable lives, John Wesley Hardin, Wild Bill Hickok, and Tom Horn became legendary not only for their infamous actions, but also for how their stories were told. This is a look into what made these men so feared, famous, and ultimately legendary in the Old West. Number 1. John Wesley Hardin. John Wesley Hardin was a notorious figure whose name struck fear in the hearts of both lawmen and fellow outlaws. Born in 1853, he lived in post-Civil War Texas, a landscape marked by shifting loyalties and tense racial and political divisions. Hardin grew up during a period when the social order was upended and violence was a common way to settle disputes. This setting profoundly influenced his outlook and response to challenges. By the age of 15, Hardin had already committed his first murder, claiming he was defending himself during an argument with a former enslaved man. Though he justified this killing as self-defense, it marked the beginning of a life steeped in bloodshed and retribution. Hardin was not only known for his high kill count, often estimated at around 20 to 40 men, but also for his unpredictable nature and the ruthless efficiency with which he wielded his gun. His reputation as a quick draw was well-deserved, and he was reportedly able to draw his gun faster than most lawmen and gunfighters of his time. This skill made him one of the most feared and sought-after outlaws in Texas. A man of fierce pride and quick temper, Hardin was known to kill over the slightest offense, which only added to his legend. One infamous story tells of him killing a man simply for snoring too loudly, showcasing the extreme level of volatility that surrounded him. Despite his violent tendencies, Hardin was also known to possess a certain cunning and intelligence. During his many years on the run, he developed an impressive ability to evade capture, changing locations and identities as needed. He spent time hiding in Alabama and Florida, using different names and moving frequently to stay one step ahead of the law. His ability to outwit lawmen became an integral part of his mythos, painting him as an outlaw with an almost supernatural talent for survival. After a prolonged game of cat and mouse with Texas Rangers, he was finally captured in 1877 in Pensacola, Florida. When arrested, Hardin attempted to shoot his way out, proving once again his commitment to resisting authority at any cost. Convicted of killing a deputy sheriff, Charles Webb, he was sentenced to 25 years in prison. During his time behind bars, Hardin pursued education in law, eventually earning a reputation as a reformed prisoner. Remarkably, he passed the bar exam and was licensed to practice law, which added another layer to his complex persona. Upon his release in 1894, Hardin tried to live a quieter life as a lawyer, but his past was not easily shaken. He became embroiled in a series of local disputes, which stirred up old tensions. In 1895, during a heated confrontation in El Paso, he was gunned down by John Selman, a lawman with whom he had long-standing animosities. Hardin's death at the age of 42 was as violent and sudden as the life he had led. Hardin's story, unlike many figures of the Old West, has been recounted in his own words through his autobiography, written while in prison. Although this autobiography is seen as a self-justifying narrative, it provides an inside look at his perspective on his actions and mindset. Today, Hardin's life stands as a symbol of the Old West's darker side, a world where violence, personal honor, and survival often determined a man's fate. His legend endures not just because of his violent acts, but because he exemplified the raw, untamed spirit of a unique historical era. Number 2. Wild Bill Hickok. Wild Bill Hickok was a larger-than-life figure whose actions in the American frontier left a mark that transcends history, blending reality with legend. Born in 1837, Hickok's early years were shaped by a strict upbringing and exposure to intense social and political tensions, especially surrounding slavery. His family's active involvement in the Underground Railroad may have laid the groundwork for his strong sense of justice and his willingness to confront danger head-on. Hickok's career began with various odd jobs, from farming to driving stagecoaches. However, he quickly gained recognition for his marksmanship and daring attitude, which led him to roles as a lawman and scout. During the Civil War, he became a Union scout and spy, often sent behind Confederate lines. His ability to remain undetected and his accuracy with firearms made him a valuable asset, and it was during this time that his reputation for bravery began to spread. His first well-documented gunfight took place in 1861, when he was involved in a shootout in Rock Creek Station, Nebraska. He reportedly killed several men, solidifying his status as a skilled gunfighter. But his fame truly skyrocketed after his 1865 quick-draw duel with Davis Tutt in Springfield, Missouri. This duel was sparked by a personal feud, and when the smoke cleared, Hickok had shot Tutt dead. The duel was sensationalized in newspapers and quickly became one of the most iconic gunfights of the Wild West, cementing Hickok's image as a fearless, deadly marksman. Hickok's time as a lawman in Kansas further boosted his reputation. Serving in Hays and later in Abilene, he was known to enforce the law with a no-nonsense approach, frequently involved in confrontations with violent criminals. His method of law enforcement was controversial. He was as feared as he was respected. Hickok operated under a strict moral code, though his quick temper and readiness to draw his guns made him a polarizing figure among townsfolk. The job was dangerous, and Hickok was constantly at risk, navigating the fine line between justice and vigilantism. In his personal life, Hickok was known for his charm and flamboyant style, often wearing custom-tailored clothing, long hair, and even jewelry, a stark contrast to the rugged, rough attire typical of the time. His personal relationships were equally colorful. He reportedly had numerous romantic entanglements, but eventually married Agnes Thatcher Lake, a circus performer, in 1876. Despite this marriage, Hickok's heart appeared to remain tethered to the frontier life and its inherent danger, and he soon returned to the West. Hickok's last days were spent in the boom town of Deadwood, Dakota Territory, where he indulged his love of poker, gambling in saloons with other famed figures like Calamity Jane, who later claimed to have had a close friendship with him. However, his life came to a sudden end on August 2nd, 1876, when he was shot in the back of the head by Jack McCall while playing poker. At the time of his death, he was holding a pair of black aces and black eights, now famously referred to as the dead man's hand. McCall was initially acquitted, but later retried, convicted, and hanged for the murder, and Hickok's death contributed to the lore that surrounded his life. Over the years, Hickok's legend grew, often depicted in dime novels as an invincible gunslinger. Yet his real life was filled with human complexities, honor, ambition, a sense of duty, and the constant threat of violence. Number 3, Tom Horn. Tom Horn was a man whose life intertwined with the law, but often on its fringes, blending the roles of soldier, scout, enforcer, and outlaw. Born in 1860, Horn became notorious for his complex and violent history across the American frontier, especially for his work as a range detective during the height of conflicts between cattle barons and homesteaders. These range wars, which peaked in Wyoming and Colorado, were sparked by powerful ranchers who resented small farmers and rustlers cutting into their profits. Horn, with his background as a scout and tracker, was the perfect fit for the Baron's covert missions, taking on assignments that frequently ended in bloodshed. From an early age, Horn exhibited a rare talent for languages, reportedly becoming fluent in Spanish and various Native American languages. This skill led him to work as an interpreter and scout during the Apache Wars. He gained a strong reputation as a skilled tracker, involved in hunting down outlaws and pursuing Apache leaders, including the notorious Geronimo. However, Horn's appetite for violence seemed to grow, and he often dealt with targets in lethal ways, fueling his fearsome reputation among both indigenous groups and settlers. After his stint as a scout, Horn joined the Pinkerton Detective Agency. Although the Pinkertons typically handled tasks such as protecting assets and tracking criminals, Horn quickly proved to be more ruthless than the agency's standard operative. His methods were sometimes seen as reckless or even sadistic, and he left the agency under dubious circumstances. Soon after, he became known as a gun for hire, often taking on range detective work that was effectively a cover for hired killings. Horn's services were frequently sought by powerful ranchers who valued his brutal tactics against suspected rustlers or rival ranchers. The most infamous incident in Horn's career came in 1901 with the murder of Willie Nickel, a 14-year-old boy found dead near his family's ranch. Although it's still debated whether Horn actually committed the murder, he was arrested and questioned extensively. During an allegedly intoxicated state, he confessed to the crime, although many suspect his words were misinterpreted or coerced. The trial was sensational, largely because of the absence of hard evidence. However, given his reputation, the public was inclined to see Horn as guilty. Despite efforts by his defense team to question the confession's validity and raise doubts, Horn was found guilty and sentenced to hang. Horn's execution in 1903 was public and dramatic, marking the end of a life that epitomized the Wild West's violent and lawless spirit. Yet, his death did little to quell the controversy surrounding him. Some saw him as a necessary enforcer who brought justice to an otherwise chaotic frontier. Others viewed him as a cold-blooded murderer, emblematic of the era's disregard for due process when wealth and power were at stake. Horn's legacy remains polarizing, a mixture of myth and documented violence that underscores the harsh reality of Old West justice. To this day, debates continue around Horn's role as either a misunderstood enforcer or a brutal mercenary, and his life has been the subject of numerous books, documentaries, and even films that explore the murky line between law and outlawry in the American West.